episode 142. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Alexa's Publishing Chat. Today we're talking about networking. And networking, if you're an active part of the Women in Publishing Summit community, you know that we put a lot of emphasis on this particular aspect. Networking can be such an amazing tool for, expanding your reach, for expanding your knowledge, for finding people to help and support you and cross promote you and do all kinds of collaborations, or even just mention a tool that you might need or something you can do. I remember one time in one of our sessions, we were talking in a group, and one of the ladies said that she'd written a children's picture book and she wanted to create these little knit caps that would be sold with the books. You know, sometimes children's picture books have stuffed animals or things like that, but because of the particular cap that the character wears, she wanted to sell those. And someone in the group was like, oh my gosh, I know this person who knits that kind of stuff all the time. Here's her contact information. You can reach out and see what you can work out. So, you never know what it is that someone else in the audience knows, has a background experience on, is connected to, has gone through themselves, and for feedback, for brainstorming, for all of these things, coming together in a room with either authors of the same genre or authors in general or other publishing professionals. We can do so much more together than we can individually, which is why we use the hashtag #BetterTogether, because we really are in this industry and in trying to be better publishing professionals and selling more books as authors. So, we talk a lot about networking. If you haven't gotten your ticket to the Women in Publishing Summit yet, you should head over to womeninpublishingsummit.com. The virtual event runs March 5th through 8th, but we're already starting with our monthly networking sessions and our monthly bonus conference sessions, and we're getting together. We have our group already started. People are already sharing and networking within that Facebook group. So even though the conference isn't until March, we try to make this a year-round event. And so grab your ticket, come join us. We'll be networking every month. The third Tuesday of every month is when we do our networking. And hopefully this interview with JF will give you some inspiration, some tips, some ideas, or just kind of give you some more insights into the importance and value of networking. And we'll be talking a lot about this over the next few months. So I hope you enjoy the show. And if you haven't rated, reviewed, or shared the podcast yet, I would really appreciate it if you would, especially with the branding change and name change in the last couple months. We're trying to get our marketing back out there. So please help us in that way if you love the show, and we certainly hope you do. If you have any questions at all, please email us at support@womeninpublishingsummit.com. And I already said it, but I'll say it again. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the podcast, a place where you can come to get inspiration, motivation, help, encouragement, and support in your journey to write, publish, and sell your book. Hosted by Alexa Bigwharf. 'Cause I've been where you've been, and I felt what you're feeling, and I don't want to get in your way. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Publish Her podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about networking for authors and how authors can network to build their audiences and to connect more and to grow that reader base through different opportunities by connecting with other authors. I'm really excited to bring you JF Garrard, who is an award-winning speculative fiction writer, editor, and publisher. She is also the president of Dark Helix Press, host of the literary podcast, The Artsy Raven, what a great name, president for the Canadian Authors Association's Toronto branch, and deputy editor for the Rice Paper magazine. So you stay a little busy, I would say, huh?
Yep.
Her portfolio of books and short fiction is listed on jfgarrard.com, and you can find her on Twitter, Instagram at JF Garrard, or Facebook at JF Garrard Author. Well, welcome to the Publisher Podcast. Really happy to have you here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So You like networking. Let's talk about it. What in your career as an author, how did networking become something that you wanted to talk and share about?
Well, to be honest, when I started writing, quite frankly, I didn't want to talk to anybody. As a writer, you sort of, you want to stay home and just do your thing. But if you talk to people, sometimes good things happen. And I think it's an important topic to talk about, especially since coming out of the pandemic. I find I'm trying to organize events and it's really hard getting people to come out. So I thought, you know what, let's, talk about this and why is it so hard for people to come out and network and stuff like that. Um, but maybe we should focus on the positive and maybe start off with why it's important. Like why
That's
do we need
great.
an author network, right?
Yes, exactly. Let's go there. Why? Why do we need an author
Why?
network? You set that right up
Now,
for me.
like writing and publishing, I mean, it's been done by many people over the course of time. And sure, you can write by yourself, but it's just sometimes I find for me it gives me energy to talk to other people. And by talking to other people, really you discover a lot of opportunities that aren't advertised. I
Hmm.
guess it's similar to like, jobs too. Like sometimes you talk to people and they're like, "Oh yeah, did you ever think about applying here?" And same thing for writers. Like there's markets everywhere. I write short fiction as well, so there's tons of markets for short stories, but sometimes they're not advertised. So when you talk to people, it opens doors to a lot of opportunities, and sometimes it could, result in book deals, speaking engagements, etc. It depends on what you want. But at the same time, you'll find a support group. I think it's important. Like writing, it's hard enough on its own, but if you have a bit of support from some friends, that helps a lot, I think.
Yeah, I agree 100%. In fact, this year, the theme of the Women in Publishing Summit was better together and just looking at like what we can all do when we come together. We bring our ideas together. I know for me, one of the best parts has been just collaborating with other authors on tools that they're using or podcasts that they go on or anything like that. Like you just, there's so much to know about marketing a book, right? But when you all of a sudden you have other people who are like, hey, I tried this or I did that, it can really, really save you some time and trying to find all these things, saving some money and going with tools that aren't good. Cause that's another thing we talk about, right? Like I tried this company and it was a bust, or I tried this company and my
Hmm.
sales increased 5 million%. Well, wouldn't that be wonderful? Tell me when you find that company. But yeah, so I think it's really important to build those networks and come together and find people that you can talk about and discuss. So there can also be downsides of networking, right? Things can happen. So what are some of the mistakes that you see and how can we avoid making those mistakes?
I think maybe one of the first mistakes is maybe being too self-promotional. Like I've been to events where it's supposed to be a social, and then you have a few just handing out business cards. Like it's like buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book. And then you're sort of like, whoa, 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 what's happening? It's just a sales pitch. And I think it's kind of funny in a way. You do want people to buy your book, but at the same time, if you push it too much, it's kind of annoying, right? So then I was like, oh yes, I remember that lady. That's the buy my book lady. I don't know if I want to talk to her next time. But I mean, there's like a line, like I think when people are interested in you, I think you need to take some time. Like there's a rapport, a connection you're trying to build. It's not just like, buy my book. Well, maybe they'll buy it next time. Maybe they don't have 20 bucks on them now, right? So, sometimes people need to see you a few times before they'll support you because it's a lot for them too. I mean, they're meeting, dozens of authors. Like, why should they buy your book? I think one mistake is, like I said, being too self-promotional. So you have to engage in conversation, I think.
Before we move on to the next, I want to ask a point of clarification here so that I can make sure I'm asking the right questions and driving this in the right direction. Are we talking about networking, authors networking together, or are we talking about authors getting out and marketing or networking in the bigger world?
Um, Authors networking together, I think, but at the same time, your majority of your audience will be in the bigger world, but
Okay, good, because I wanted to lean in on that piece because I think while we're talking about mistakes, to add on to what you said, like for
Mhm.
authors, that I think that the benefit of networking comes from sharing resources and being able to do collaborations together, but not trying to sell our books. So I know, like in our
Mhm.
groups, we encourage people to stay away from actually promoting their books at all, unless they're looking for um beta readers or ARC team or things like that, because you're
Mhm.
so right. I mean, how nobody's going to want to talk to you if all you're trying to do is get them to buy your book, because authors don't want to buy each other's books. I mean, sometimes we do, but for the most part, like we can't, because if we were buying every author's book that we came across, we'd have no time to write and no money, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, okay, I was going to talk about three mistakes. So one is being too self-promotional. The second is not following up. So,
Mm,
it's kind of fun. I'm actually very introverted in a way. So when I talk to people, like I only focus on one or two people at a time. I can't go to a group, you know what
right,
I mean?
right.
So if I make a good connection, it's really important to follow up, maybe, a week later or something. Hey, let's talk about, I don't know, like my child does fencing, and let's say the other person, I actually did meet an editor of a science fiction magazine. It turns out he was a fencer.
Oh,
Like that
wow.
was so weird. And then so I followed up with him and I was like, hey, oh, there's a fencing competition coming up, etc. Where do you buy equipment? Just to sort of continue our conversation. It was kind of funny. This editor, I was at a conference, speculative fiction writing conference, and so many people were hounding him. And then at one point, we were alone, and then he's sort of like, "Do you have a story you want to sell me?" And I'm like, "Actually, no, I haven't written anything in a while, so I'm not selling you anything. Let's just chat,
Let's just
right?" So,
talk.
and then
What a
later he
relief.
came on. And then later he came on my podcast, stuff like that. So, it's important to follow up and build a friendship. And the third thing is not giving value. I think when you're building a relationship, if you're always a taker, that's, it's kind of annoying. So effective networking, it involves like I can't say the word reciprocity and mutual benefits. So like, like don't just focus on what you're getting from them. Like you have to offer something as well. I mean, it could be different types of support, right? I mean, if you're building a friendship, emotional support, offering feedback, collaborating on projects.
Right.
Um, so it's like building goodwill in a way. So,
Right. I think that's a great point, because sometimes in the beginning, you may not be able to offer something like a newsletter swap or something if you haven't built an email list, but being able to provide feedback or to be an advanced reader or to do, I mean, there's so many things that sharing tools and resources, brainstorming, there's so many things that you can actually do that don't require a large audience or all those kinds of things set up. So I think getting to know people and knowing what they are looking for is such a big piece of that. I love the fencing connection there, because you never know when you're just opened up to just having a conversation with people without any strings attached, what could potentially come out of that relationship. So this leads us right into the perfect next question, which is, once you've started building that author network, how do you use it?
well, first of all, like, what do you think you want to do with your writing career, right? Like for me, I was looking for, because I was starting to write short stories. I'm like, oh, I don't really have a market, and so I started talking to some people. It turns out, oh, look, they're actually going to publish an anthology soon, and they need stories. Like, just starting a conversation, and then you never know what opportunities are out there. So just talk to people, and also be very genuine, like, this is your work that you actually care about. So but also at the same time you have to show empathy, like they might have problems too, offer an ear, listen to what they're saying. um and you can also sort of leverage social media if they use social media, whoever you're networking with, like, like their thing, retweet, etc. Because, they might or might not reciprocate. That's the thing. Like, don't think, it's a sure thing. Just because you retweet it, they're gonna retweet. Sometimes it doesn't happen. That's okay, but just maintain a constant presence so they remember, oh, right, that's the person that I talked to last week, or they're retweeting me. That's really nice. And also maybe attend events if you can. Like,
Mhm.
because there's nothing like in person. I mean, I know virtual is very popular right now, but it's really hard, I find, to make a connection virtually. It's like it takes extra work, and I'm not saying it's impossible, Let's just, it feels like you have to stalk someone after. Oh, remember, I saw you at that Zoom event with 5,000 people, and I thought I'd have some questions. Like, you can do it. It's just a different type of networking. And then, make an appointment, follow up. Um, and yeah, and also always be supportive, I think. Like, I mean, there's something said about like, when, oh gosh, what's the saying about not saying mean things about people? Always be kind because you
Mhm.
never know. So even if they're talking trash about you. Just hold your tongue, because you never know. That's all I'm saying.
Now, I think your point on going to in-person events is really right on because I just came back from a conference actually, and you build real relationships and friendships with people that you've shared a meal with, that you've had a drink with, that you got lost on your way to, whatever with, that you giggled with over something that happened or whatever. So I think I love that advice to get out and meet people in person. I created some really great relationships by going through conferences, and those have been the most fruitful when it comes to supporting each other and collaborating along the way via either whether they come on the podcast or whether they promote a book or whether they somebody else that I can refer somebody or something to if you're offering services. All of those are so important. Have you done any collaborations with other authors in your genre from
Oh,
people?
definitely. Yeah, there was one, oh, very good friend. I met her, Jen Frankel. Oh my gosh. It's like 15 years ago. We met at a conference randomly. I forget what happened. We just met each other. I think we are attending a seminar. And then we started chatting, and then, we followed up. And to be honest, I don't think we traded books until like 10 years later. It's like,
Oh,
oh, right.
wow.
Have you read my book? I was like, oh, right, I haven't. And then we just traded. And yeah, I needed an editor for something. She came to mind. And we've collaborated on a bunch of different projects. And oh my gosh, we even did a Trump book together.
A
It was
what?
at the time when he was just elected president, Donald
Oh,
Trump,
oh.
because my father died that year, and I remember being really angry, and I needed to focus my energy on something. So we did this anthology where we asked for good and bad stories because it was in the beginning of his
Right.
election, and we're like, it could go either way. I don't know. And we're Canadians, so to us, we're like, we're just watching for now, and and so we
So we got
collected,
our
you
popcorn.
know, yeah. So we had good stories and bad stories, and just they were. I have to say, people were very negative with their stories, but we tried to, be balanced with the book, and we had a blast like working on that book together, and we're still friends today, and yeah, you just never know, I
Oh,
guess.
you don't. And I love that when authors come together. I've talked to a couple different authors who've made really good connections with other people writing in their genre. And they've done, well, anthologies is a
Mhm.
great one, or short story collections. But also, I think it's really fun when you see people in a genre come together and either co-author a series or like two of my favorite rom-com authors, they started writing a dual point of view rom-com together, and one of them wrote the
Ooh.
female voice and one of them wrote the male voice. And just, I mean, there's just opportunities like that are just so fun, and you never know where these connections that you make can lead you.
Oh no, oh definitely. And I think when you go to conferences as well, you're meeting groups of people. Everyone there is learning and they
Mhm,
want to grow. So you're
mhm.
meeting, people that want to, move forward, right? And they're looking for opportunities too. So there's like such a great space for collaborating. And I mean, that's how I ended up being president of the Canadian Authors in Toronto, because I was working on this book and the editor's like, I heard you like volunteering. You want to volunteer? And I'm like, what am I volunteering for? And then 5 years later, I'm still volunteering with this great group. And you just, it was just very random, so.
But you never know what doors will be opened when you just put yourself out there.
Yeah, and I know it's hard sometimes, especially I think, pandemic, we've all grown used to being in a bubble.
Mhm.
But I think as the world's opening up, I think people are traveling again, they're going out again.
Yeah.
But sometimes I have to like prep myself up too. It's like, before a conference, because I sort of get anxious about going out. But it's like, look, you never know what you're gonna find, and just sleep well and just have energy the day you go. Have some
Yeah.
ginseng or something. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So you have a podcast as well. What's your podcast focus on?
It's called the RC Raven. It's in a way it's for authors. I interview different editors, and authors, although lately also directors and actors, to ask them about their creative life, how they got there, do they have any tips for people starting out? So So yeah, it's like a podcast for authors in a way. So
That sounds great. Well, I have enjoyed speaking with you all about networking and the ins and outs. Did you have anything else on the topic that you wanted to share?
um so thank you everyone for listening, and I hope that you will all go out and talk to people. And yeah,
Personally,
and
just talk
find
to
me
people.
online too. Find me
And
online if you want.
where do you want people to go to connect with you?
Oh gosh. I have a website, just jfgarrard.com. So everything is there. Or the Canadian Authors Association Toronto branch. We have, because we're doing virtual events, so anyone can attend. So it's open to everybody. So
Oh, I wanted to ask you one more question before we wrap this up. You have Dark Helix Press. Is that only your works or do you publish other authors as well?
I publish other people as well, and I do anthologies with other groups. So some of the groups I volunteer for, the Asian Canadian Writers Workshop,
Mhm.
they started publishing, and then after a while they're like, "Oh, this is so much work. Do you want to do it for us?" So we
Nice.
worked out a deal, and then so I published them. They're like a line in the publishing company, but I publish other people. But yeah, so we have lots of diverse speculative fiction is what I call it. So a lot of, I don't know, weird things that other publishers might not publish. So
Very cool. So if you write in that stuff other people might not publish, the dark, weird stuff, as she said, speculative fiction. It's a Dark Helix Press and
press.com.
yep, and Helix
Yeah,
is spelled Helix, just to
yeah, like the DNA.
like the
So yeah,
DNA. Well, that's so great. Well, thank you so much, JF. I appreciate you taking time out. This has been fun. And I mean, you definitely gave some great examples along the way of how good things can come when you just make connections with people, right?
yes, exactly.
All right. Well, thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
You don't have to give me your heart. You don't have to give it away. You don't
Thank you for joining us on the podcast. We hope to see you back for the next episode. Great, huge thanks goes to Jasmine Commerce for the use of her song. You can find Jasmine on SoundCloud. Go check out all of her music. We'll see you next time.